This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Everyone, so the Seder Hayom is just we have a short shiur about some important machshavos we could have throughout the day. This is just by way of introduction, kickoff. But after this, there's going to be, instead of hachana and one long shiur, it will be hachana, short shiur, hachana, short shiur. So this portion is not related to the sugya that we're doing in the Yarchei Kallah. In the very first Bir Halacha in the Mishnah Berurah, the Bir Halacha quotes the Sefer HaChinuch. And the Sefer HaChinuch talks about, even though they're Taryag mitzvahs, almost all the mitzvahs have parameters that make it that it's uncommon or infrequent to be able to mekayim a mitzvah. Not every day could you eat matzah. You could eat matzah every day, but not every day will you be mekayim a mitzvah. Not every day could you sit in a sukkah. Even other mitzvahs that could happen at any time, most people here perhaps have never even done pidyon peter chamar, right? When was the last time you did or shilach hakein? It has to come up. But the Sefer HaChinuch, and this is sort of the invention of the Sefer HaChinuch, the Sefer HaChinuch created an idea. There's something called sheish mitzvahs tamidiyos. There's 6 mitzvahs that have no parameter. Meaning, you can be mekayim it any day, night, Shabbos, Chol, Yom Tif. There's 6 mitzvahs that any time you think about this, you're mekayim a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa. Now it's interesting. The Bir Halacha quotes the Sefer HaChinuch and he speaks about it very lengthy. The Sefer HaChinuch writes this literally in 3 lines, all 6 mitzvahs. Number 1, lahamin b'Hashem, to believe in Hashem. Number 2, shlo lahamin zulasai, not to believe in another God. Gimel, liyachdai. 4, la'ahava oisai, to love Hashem. Liyira oisai, to fear Him. And shlo lasar achar machshavos halev uriyas einayim, and not to veer after your heart and your eyes. Where the Bir Halacha says that any time a person thinks of any of these 6 things, a person gets schar in l'shayar. But actually, if you look up the Sefer HaChinuch, the Sefer HaChinuch says, what's the mnemonic to help you remember the sheish mitzvahs tamidiyos? He says, sheish arei miklat tiena. There are 6 cities of refuge. So, what is the connection between the 6 mitzvahs tamidiyos and cities of refuge? The answer is very simple. There are many situations in life that could be a disaster. For example, you're sitting at a red light. What are you going to do for the next 30 seconds? What are you going to do? Or you could be in an airport and you're walking on a line for 20 minutes. What are you going to do? Or you could be on the runway. What are you going to do for so long? So, okay, of course, there's always Talmud Torah. But the Sefer HaChinuch says there are 6 Orei Miklat, there are 6 cities of refuge that wherever, whenever, you could always... By the way, there's a shaila in the Achronim. Can you be Mekayim, the Sheish Mitzvahs Tamidiyos, in the bathroom? Could you do that in the bathroom? It's a question. So they asked Reb Vosner, because, it sounds like, who's actually going to do this? You can actually think about this multiple times a day? So Reb Vosner, Reb Vosner learned in Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin. He was a baki b'shas. He was constantly reviewing Shas and Poskim. So, they wanted to ask him, is this like a legitimate thing? Reb Vosner said, Ta'amin li chabibi, believe me, not one day of my life went by that I was not mekayim the sheish mitzvahs tamidiyos l'chal hapachos meya pa'amim. Not one day of my life went by that I didn't review the sheish mitzvahs tamidiyos at least 100 times. So it's interesting. You could go to shul. Imagine if every time you went to shul, you had to stay there at least once, thinking about the sheish mitzvahs tamidiyos. So it's 18 times a day. In the course of a week, it's over 100 times a week. In the course of a year, it's 5,000 times a year. So it could mamish be machriya person l'tzad zechus. So that's something we're all familiar with, but it's kedai always to bear in mind. I want to talk about the name of Hashem, the Shem Hashem. The Shulchan Aruch says that when you say Hashem's name, you should be mechavein, let's say the Shem Havaya, you should be mechavein, the meaning, the way it's pronounced Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Hashem is Adon Koil, and you should have in mind the meaning, the way it's written. How is it written? Yud Kei Vav Kei, Haya, Hoive, V'yeh. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. It's a siman in Shulchan Aruch, siman Hey. Yechavein Babrachos Perush Hamilos, K'sheyazker Hashem Yechavein Perush Kriyasai, Ba'adnos Shu Adon Koil, V'yechavein B'ksivasai, Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's halach in Shulchan Aruch that every time you make a bracha, you should think Baruch Atah Hashem Adon Koil Haya Hoive V'yeh. So some people do that. Some people have a siddur. It says in the siddur the meaning of the name of Hashem Adon Koil Haya Hoive V'yeh. But there's a trick. Let's say you can't do that every time. There's a trick. And this is a very important trick to know. You should think at least once a day. In the morning, I make a t'nai that whenever I say Hashem's name, I have in mind that Hashem's name means Adon Koil Haya Hoive V'yeh. And when I say Elokim, what does Elokim mean? Takif, Hashem is powerful, Ubal HaYecholes, He has all ability, Ubalaka, you could make a t'nai. So in other words, you're going to say Hashem's name probably 500 times in the day. At least. With all the brachos, and Kriyat Shema, and Psukei Zimra, and learning, and davening, you're probably going to say Hashem's name, L'chol HaPachos, 500 times a day. How many of them are you having the right kavanah? So if you train yourself, you could have your right kavanah every single time. It's instinctive. Hashem's name means Adon Koil Haya Hoive V'yeh. But if you can't do that, you could make a t'nai. It's brought down in Sifrei Lomdos. There's a Sefer Afikei Yam. Afikei Yam is one of the Svarim that's learned in the Olam HaYeshivas, Rabbi Chiel Michal Rabinowitz. He says, Inyan Gadol Hu Lahasnois. Kisha Azker B'chol Yoim, the Shem Adnos, Kavanosi, Shu Adon Koil. And when I say Shem Havaya, my kavanah is Adon Koil, Haya Hoive V'yeh. And when I say Elokim, my kavanah is Takif, Ubal HaYecholes, Ubal HaKoiches Kulam. You say, really? By the way, you heard of the Eish Shel Avram of Buchach, yeah? A lot of the kulas that people rely on are found in the back of the Shulchan Aruch in microscopic letters of the Eish Shel Avram of Buchach. Nobody knows where they are, but they say it's in there. You know, if somebody says, where do you get that from? Where's that kula from? It's in the Eish Shel Avram of Buchach. Why? Because nobody will ever catch you on that. You know, it's in tiny microscopic letters. Actually, when I was in Queens, I had a zechus to know Rabbi Shlomo Warman, who was a direct descendant of Rabbi Avram David Varman, the Eish Shel Avram Buchach. He had a yichus brivel. I saw it, tracing him back to the Eish Shel Avram. The Eish Shel Avram wrote a siddur, Das Kadoshim. In the beginning of a siddur, there's a t'nai. The t'nai is, I have a masna, that every time I say the Shem Hashem, I have the following kavanah. So you say, who says you could do such a thing? Okay, we're going to take a little poll here, okay? Who says in the siddur, I'm not saying whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I just want to know, since we're all friends here at the Yarchei Kallah MMH 2024, who says Adon Olam? Who says it? You say it, right? Adon Olam. Sometimes. Me too, I also say it sometimes. I say it on Rosh Hashanah at the end of davening, I say it. The Apter Rav writes, what's Adon Olam? Adon Olam is the t'nai that's made in the beginning of davening of the right kavanos for Hashem's name. In other words, Adon Olam starts, Adon Olam, meaning when I say Adon and then Noi, my kavanah is Adon Olam. And when I say Elokim, Beli Reishis, V'loi Ha'oiz V'hamisra. And when I say the Shem Havaya, V'hu Haya, V'hu Hoiveh, V'hu Yiyeh, Adonai Olam was the original Tanai that was made in the beginning of the Siddur. So before you start davening, you're masna what your kavanah is. Because sometimes there are minyanim that you don't actually have time to say all the words. There exists such a thing that you don't actually, for example, anyone who davens Nusach Ashkenaz would have chance to say about 1/5 of Tachanon in a Nusach Sfarad Shul. Let's say this morning, right? They give you about 1/5 of the time. So what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do with the Shem Hashem? So it's whether you say now you could say Adonai Olam and not know it's a Tanai, so then it's not going to be a Tanai. But it's kedai to be aware of. It's a Tanai that changes every single recitation of Hashem's name. Okay, one last thing. Tzitzis. What should you think when you put on tzitzis? So I'm going to share with you 5 kavanos to have when you put on tzitzis. The first halacha is, many married men don't know, they're still making a bracha on the talis katan. I'm not going to take a poll. I've learned my lesson not to take a poll, because usually when I do this, more than half the people raise their hand that they're still making a bracha on the talis katan. You're not in cheder anymore. You're a big boy. You're married. You walk down to the chuppah. Once you walk down to the chuppah, you say goodbye. You say to your parents, you're moving out. You're of age. You could drink. You have a driver's license, and you no longer make a bracha on the talis katan. Okay? There are many reasons for that, but that's a halacha. You don't make a bracha on the talis katan. So the question is, but I did a mitzvah. So how am I making a bracha on the talis katan? Don't I have to make? The answer is, the talis gadol will cover the talis katan. But as long as you're mechavein that the talis gadol covers the talis katan. You need to have that in mind. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. When you put on the talis, the first kavanah is mitzvah strichas kavanah. What's the halacha? If you do a mitzvah and you don't formally think that I'm having kavanah to be mekayim the mitzvah, yatsa or la yatsa? La yatsa. You're right, it's a machlokes. But like all good machlokes, we have a conclusion. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Siman Samach, mitzvahs tzrichos kavanah. It is a machlokes. The conclusion is mitzvahs tzrichos kavanah. Ad kidei kach, that Rav Shlomo Zalman writes that if you did a mitzvah without kavanah, not only do you not get the mitzvah, but if you put on tzitzis without kavanah, you wore a beged of dalid kanfos without tzitzis. You're a mevatel anaseh. Or if you sat in a sukkah and you were not mechavein to eat in the sukkah, you ate outside of the sukkah. You hear such a thing? The Rabbi Shlomo Zalman writes about that. So the first kavanah is before any mitzvah. Before you learn, you need to formally think, I have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Before birchas haTorah, birchas haTorah is a mitzvah d'oraisa. You have kavanah. I have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of birchas haTorah. Before birchas hamazon, have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of birchas hamazon. What about mitzvahs d'Rabbanan? Do mitzvahs d'Rabbanan need kavanah? Pri Megadim says yes. Before you give, for Mikra Megillah, I have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. Before Mishlayach Manos, I have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of Mishlayach Manos. So you say, well, I better get started now because it's been many, many years since I fulfilled a mitzvah. So there's a Chayei Adam says that you could assume that the only reason you're doing it is for the sake of the mitzvah, so staman l'shman, so b'di'eved you're yotzei. Now most Jews want to do mitzvahs l'chachila, no? Most l'chachila, it's always better to do mitzvahs l'chachila. So the first kavanah when you put on tzitzis, you have to have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. Number 2, the Bach. The Bach says that whenever the Torah says leman, the Torah is saying that this mitzvah you have to have a particular kavanah. So when you put on tzitzis, you need to think you're putting on tzitzis to remember the mitzvahs of Hashem. That's number 2. Number 3. Number 3 is when you make the bracha on the talis gadol, you should have in mind it's covering the talis katan. What if that's too complicated? So you ready? It's a good thing you came to Yarchei Kallah. Think right now, the Ben Ish Chai writes, that I have kavanah that from now on, when I put on a talis gadol, it should cover my talis katan mikan ad soif yamai. You could make a t'nai that's effective mikan and forever. Who says that? The Eshel Avram Abuchach in the back, in very microscopic letters, he says, Yachol legalo is datoi pam achas avur kol yamav shela oilam kisheyevarich al talis gadol yiftar bekachas a talis katan. Who else says that? The Marsham. Marsham says you could make a t'nai not only for a day, it's effective for good. Kavanah number 4. Who here wears tchelas? We don't have tchelas. But you should think, I wish I had tchelas. Because chishev lasos mitzvah, v'nenas, v'lo mala olav kilu asa. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz writes in the Yaris Davash, whenever you put on tzitzis, you should be mechavein, I wish I had tchelas. And then you get schar for tchelas. Now actually, so I think not wearing tchelas is better than wearing tchelas, because when you wear tchelas, maybe yeah, maybe no. But if you don't wear tchelas and you wish you did, then everybody knows the famous Shiur by Esther. Then you get credit for the real thing. Number 5, the Arizal says that even though you don't have tchelas, you should think the oiros of tchelas is still present in the lavan. The spiritual power of tchelas is still extant in the lavan. The Ari says you should be mechamed that when you wear tzitzis. So it's only 5 things to think. You have kavanah to mikayim mitzvah tzitzis. You're wearing tzitzis leman tizkuru v'asisam es kol mitzvosai to pater the talis katan. You wish you had tchelas, and the hashpah of tchelas is there. Now, all you have to do is write it down, and then it only takes a millisecond. But v'chahena by all mitzvahs, with the right kavanah, you completely transform the mitzvah. Okay, we're going to start now the sugya. We're going to begin. Well, here's the plan, Mayor. The plan is that we're splitting it up.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.